In the medieval world, danger rarely announced itself. It did not knock politely. It did not explain. It arrived quietly, without shape or color, and often without warning. People did not believe sickness came from inside the body. It came from outside. It drifted in. It slipped through cracks. It followed movement. To medieval people, the world was not made of empty space. Air was not nothing. Darkness was not absence. Sound was not harmless. Everything moved, and whatever moved carried meaning. Survival depended on noticing disturbances before they noticed you. They lived inside a universe that listened back. Sound was never just sound. A noise was an event. A signal, a shift in balance. When something broke the quiet, the air itself was believed to react. And if the air reacted, the body was at risk. A sudden knock at night could stop an entire household. Not because of thieves, not because of violence, but because the air had been disturbed without warning. Sound traveled through air. Air carried forces. And those forces could enter the body through breath. This idea felt logical at the time. People noticed that sickness followed crowded places. That it appeared after celebrations, after shouting, after chaos. Without knowing why, they connected illness to movement. And sound was movement made audible. In narrow medieval streets, echoes mattered. A loud voice bounced between stone walls. It lingered. It did not disappear quickly. That lingering felt dangerous. The air seemed unsettled, unstable, as if it remembered the sound. Laughter late at night was discouraged, not because joy was forbidden, but because it arrived at the wrong time. Night was already risky. Adding noise to it felt irresponsible. Even happiness needed restraint. During times of widespread illness, communities became quieter. Music softened, conversation shortened. Children were told to lower their voices. Silence became a form of protection. A careful silence, not absence, but control. Sound, when controlled, could be useful. Church bells were the exception. Their sound was deliberate, measured, heavy. Bells did not surprise the air. They disciplined it. When bells rang, they rang with purpose. Their vibrations were believed to push invisible dangers away. During outbreaks of sickness, bells rang more often, longer, louder. Not to warn people, but to cleanse the space around them. The sound moved through the town like a ritual wave, shaking the air loose from corruption. It was believed the air needed to be reminded who was in charge. Silence, however, had limits. Absolute quiet was unsettling. If no sound moved through the air, something felt wrong. Stagnant air was dangerous air. Silence suggested stillness. And stillness meant the air was no longer defending itself. People slept lightly. They listened, not for safety, but for confirmation. A creaking floorboard, a distant cough, a horse shifting outside. These sounds reassured them that the world was still moving. Movement meant life. Complete silence meant vulnerability. Inside homes, sound was managed carefully. Doors were closed softly, objects were handled with caution. Sudden noises caused tension, not panic, but alertness. Everyone noticed, everyone paused. At night, this awareness sharpened. Darkness already made the world uncertain. Sound added risk. A whisper traveled farther. A dropped object felt louder. Every noise seemed to echo longer than it should. People believed the night air behaved differently, heavier, more receptive, more dangerous. Sound moving through it felt amplified, as if the air itself was listening closely. This belief shaped architecture. Thick walls, small windows, low ceilings. These did not just keep warmth inside, they limited the movement of sound. They softened echoes, they reduced disturbance. Homes were built to protect the air inside them. The body was seen as porous, not sealed. Breath connected the inside to the outside constantly. Every inhale was an opening, every exhale a release. Sound, traveling through air, passed close to the face, close to the mouth, close to the lungs. If the air was disturbed, the body followed. Medical thinking supported this. Doctors believed imbalance caused illness. Sound was imbalance made audible. Too much noise meant too much movement. Too much movement meant disorder. Calm environments were healthy environments. Hospitals reflected this belief. They were quiet places, dim, heavy, filled with slow movement and controlled sounds. Loud behavior was discouraged, not for comfort, for protection. Doctors spoke softly, patients were kept still. Activity was limited, healing required calm air. Children were trained into this awareness early. They were taught when to speak, when not to, when noise was acceptable. When it was dangerous, shouting indoors was discouraged. Running at dusk was corrected quickly. Obedience was not about manners. It was about survival. Sound could betray you. This constant vigilance shaped medieval psychology. People learned to monitor their environment closely, to notice shifts, to sense danger without seeing it. Fear was not dramatic, it was quiet, persistent, practical. They did not need monsters. They lived with invisible threats every day. To modern ears, this sounds excessive. But without knowledge of bacteria or viruses, sound offered clues. Illness appeared after disruption, after gatherings, after noise. The connection felt real, so they listened carefully. And they believed the air listened back. In a world where danger could not be seen, sound became one of the few warnings available. Not always accurate, but never ignored. In the medieval mind, silence, noise, and everything between them carried meaning. And surviving meant understanding when the air had been disturbed. This was only the beginning. Because sound was not the most dangerous invisible enemy, smell came next.
If sound warned them that the air had moved, smell told them something far worse. In the medieval world, a bad smell was never just unpleasant. It was dangerous. Sometimes it was believed to be fatal. People did not wrinkle their noses out of disgust. They did it out of fear. They believed illness traveled on scent, that corrupted air entered the body through breath. What you smelled could decide whether you lived or died. Breathing was not a neutral act. It was a risk taken constantly. This invisible poison had a name, miasma. A word that explained everything and nothing at the same time. Miasma was believed to rise from rot, from damp ground, from stagnant water, from crowded streets, from places where things decayed slowly and quietly. It drifted without urgency. It did not chase. It waited. People believed miasma slipped into the body through the nose. From there, it traveled inward, toward the chest, toward the heart. Once inside, it disrupted balance, and imbalance caused illness. This belief felt reasonable. People noticed sickness followed bad smells, after floods, after heat, after markets grew too crowded, after food spoiled. Without microscopes, smell was evidence. Doctors relied on it heavily. They leaned close to patients, inhaled carefully, and judged the air around a body before touching it. A strong, unpleasant odor meant danger. A sharp or fragrant smell meant protection. Treatment often began with scent. Patients were surrounded by smells intentionally. Herbs placed near beds, flowers hung from walls, spices burned slowly in bowls. The goal was not comfort, it was control. If the air could be dominated by a stronger smell, the weaker, dangerous one would retreat. At least, that was the idea. People carried their protection with them. Small pouches filled with herbs, bundles of dried plants tied to clothing. These were not fashion choices. They were shields. Perfume was not vanity. It was medicine. The wealthy had stronger protection, imported spices, rare resins, powerful fragrances. The poor used what they could find, garlic, onions, a local herb. The principle was the same. Strong scent meant safety. Homes were filled with scent on purpose, floors covered with plants, walls lined with herbs. Over time, those plants decayed, and when they did, they were replaced, or covered with more. Fresh scent mattered more than cleanliness. Fires burned constantly, not only for warmth, but to keep air moving. Smoke filled rooms deliberately. Wood, resin, incense. Smoke was not suffocating, it was cleansing. During times of widespread illness, smoke thickened everywhere. Streets became hazy, homes grew dim. The air was never allowed to rest. Still air was suspicious air. Even unpleasant materials were burned, if their smell was strong enough. The logic was simple. One powerful scent could overpower another. It sounds absurd now, but at the time it felt like strategy. Cities were constant sources of fear. Waste-filled streets, animals lived alongside people, water sat stagnant in open channels. Smell was unavoidable, but not all smells were equal. Some were tolerated, others were feared. The smell of decay was especially dangerous. It meant something had stopped moving, stopped changing, stopped breathing. And what stopped breathing was close to death. Markets were risky places, not only because of crowds, but because of mixed smells. Meat, sweat, waste. Too many scents blending together felt dangerous, confusing, unstable. People passed through quickly. They covered their faces. They avoided lingering. When illness spread, authorities responded by controlling smell. Fires were ordered lit, incense burned, garbage moved or burned. The air had to be managed. Hospitals followed the same rules. They were thick with scent, herbs, smoke, wax. Fresh air was not welcomed. It was unpredictable. Better to control what entered the lungs. Even death had a smell that frightened people. Not for emotional reasons, but practical ones. Dead bodies were believed to release corrupted air, air that lingered, air that infected. This belief changed burial practices. It changed how bodies were handled. It changed where the dead were allowed to remain. Smell determined distance. Children learned these rules early. They learned which places smelled dangerous, which rooms felt safe, which scents meant protection. They learned to trust their noses. This constant awareness shaped medieval life deeply. People navigated the world by scent. They adjusted routes. They avoided spaces. They changed behavior. Fear was not loud. It was subtle, persistent, breathing in and out. From a modern perspective, miasma was wrong, but it was not foolish. People observed patterns. Illness followed rot, followed crowding, followed stagnation. Smell was the only warning sign they had, so they treated it seriously. In their world, air could betray you. Breath could invite danger, and protection often smelled stronger than the threat itself. Sound had warned them when the air moved. Smell told them when the air had turned. But there was still another invisible enemy, one that arrived quietly, without scent, without sound. Darkness. If sound warned them that the air had moved, and smell told them the air had turned dangerous, darkness suggested something worse. Darkness meant presence. Shadows were not empty. They were occupied. In the medieval imagination, light revealed safety. Darkness concealed intention. A shadow was not the absence of light. It was a place where unseen forces gathered, waited, and lingered. Corners of rooms caused discomfort. Places where candlelight failed were treated with caution. People avoided standing too close to walls at night, not because they feared the wall itself, but because shadows clung there. Illness that appeared suddenly needed an explanation. Often, that explanation involved darkness. Someone had crossed a shadow at the wrong moment. Someone had lingered too long at dusk. Someone had slept where light could not reach. Dusk was especially dangerous. It was not day. It was not night. It was a transition, and transitions were unstable. Medieval people believed invisible forces moved most freely during moments of change. Night carried its own rules. The world felt heavier after sunset. Sounds traveled differently, smells lingered longer, shadows grew deeper. The air itself seemed more receptive. Candles were left burning not simply to see, but to protect. Light pushed back shadows, and shadows were believed to cling to the body, especially when it was still. Sleep was considered a vulnerable state. When the body rested, defenses weakened. Breath slowed. Awareness faded. This made sleep dangerous. Many people avoided lying completely flat. Sleeping upright felt safer. It was believed this position protected the heart and lungs from harmful vapors that might rise during the night. Sharing beds was common, not only for warmth, but for protection. Another body meant another presence, another breath. Being alone at night meant facing invisible forces without witnesses. The body itself was not trusted. Skin was not a barrier. It was a door. Pores could open. Sweat weakened defenses. Warmth softened the body, making it more receptive to intrusion. This belief shaped daily habits. Bathing was approached with caution. Warm water was believed to open the body. After bathing, people often rested indoors, away from drafts, allowing the body to close again. Cold, dry air felt safer than warmth. Dryness meant firmness, control. Moisture meant vulnerability. Movement also carried risk. The body moving through space disturbed the air. Too much movement meant too much disruption. Too much disruption invited danger. Crowds were especially feared, not because of people themselves, but because of what moved between them. Shared air, shared breath, shared disturbance. Markets were risky, festivals were worse. Too much motion, too much noise, too much scent mixing together. During times of illness, celebrations were limited. Processions shortened, public gatherings reduced. The goal was not isolation, it was control. Cities reflected this thinking. Streets were narrow, buildings were heavy, windows were small. Airflow was restricted intentionally. Trapped air felt manageable. Fresh air felt unpredictable. Hospitals followed the same logic. They were enclosed, dim, thick with scent and smoke. Patients were kept still. Activity was limited. Healing required calm air and controlled movement. Doctors dressed to protect themselves from invisible harm. Long garments covered the body. Faces were partially concealed. Breath itself was considered risky. Illness could cling to sound, fabric, and motion. Children learned these fears early. They were taught when to speak and when to remain quiet. When to play and when to stay still.
Now, lad.
Running at dusk was corrected quickly. Shouting indoors was discouraged. These rules were not about discipline. They were about survival. Religion gave shape to these fears. Invisible forces were not only natural, they were spiritual. Illness could be punishment, or imbalance, or intrusion. Prayer restored order. Ritual created boundaries. Faith did not remove fear, it organized it. The medieval world demanded constant awareness. People monitored their surroundings carefully. Sound, smell, light, movement. Nothing was ignored. Fear was not dramatic. It was practical, quiet, constant. From a modern perspective, these beliefs seem misguided. But medieval people were not foolish. They were observant. They noticed illness followed decay, followed crowds, followed stagnation. Without microscopes, they built explanations that made sense of suffering. These explanations helped them feel less helpless. The invisible had always frightened humanity. In the Middle Ages, invisible enemies were everywhere. Today, the explanations are different. Germs, radiation, data. But the anxiety remains the same. We still fear what we cannot see. The medieval world was not ruled by ignorance. It was ruled by caution. A caution born from living close to death, without answers, forced to listen, smell, and watch for danger. Sound warned them, smell confirmed it, darkness concealed it, and survival meant respecting what could not be seen.